Good evening, my fellow Jamaicans. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. As you know, the Prime Minister gave an announcement yesterday, and so the UIC would like to give a response to that and offer something else for all of us to look at and consider as a nation. So, to begin, let me just say that the United Independence Congress of Jamaica fully recognizes that our country has been facing the scourge of a crime epidemic for decades. Successive governments have been unable or unwilling to do what is legally and morally necessary to free our country from the grip of criminal gangs. Jamaica's crime problem has some characteristics that are unique to Jamaica. For example, unlike Mexico or Colombia, Jamaica is a small island. This characteristic is actually an advantage for us. Criminals have nowhere else to go. Mexico has failed to control their gangs or their cartels, but Colombia and other jurisdictions have had some successes in fighting crime, so we do not have to reinvent the wheel. The use of a state of emergency to fight crime in Jamaica is using a very blunt instrument to solve a very specific problem. Prime Minister Holness is using what is called the iron fist method. The problem is SOEs cause collateral damage. Rights of citizens are violated, pepper sprayed, brutally harassed, detentions of innocent young men and women. All of this is uncalled for and unnecessary. Despite Mr. Holness's and Commissioner Anderson's claim that the police are trained to respect people's rights, there continues to be numerous instances where the police have done the complete opposite. The most recent example was the treatment meted out to myself and others on the 22nd of September 2021, where peaceful protesters were treated with brute force and shown no respect by those who are called to uphold the law. The current SOE, especially in Kingston and St. Andrew, illustrates the class divide in Jamaica. The poorer areas are in the SOEs, while the wealthy uptown areas are not included in the SOEs. This is just wrong. States of emergency reduce crime for a very short period. It's addressing only the symptoms and not the real cause. Following the removal of SOEs, you will see a spike in crime almost always. The government has attempted to use the same method of managing the COVID 19 pandemic, with not a single thought on how to identify the root causes and finding solutions to address them, while at the same time respecting our individual rights and sovereignty. There is no need to suspend the natural born fundamental rights and freedoms of the Jamaican people to put an end to the epidemic of crime in Jamaica or to the pandemic for that matter. The UIC is therefore providing an alternative solution to the ineffective states of emergencies that have and is being used to combat crime in Jamaica. First of all, the government must reopen and turn over the management and control of schools to the school boards and the administrators across the country. The government must no longer directly interfere with the running of these schools, except to protect the rights of students, parents, and teachers. Children have been seriously affected by their unnecessary exclusion from access to face learning. It is well known and documented that youth between the ages of 12 to 19 are among the largest group of participants in criminal activities in our country. Locking down schools was ill advised and has cost us dearly as a nation, not to mention the long term impact on the children, on the economy, and on the society at large. Number two, We call upon the government to begin the activation of the UIC's Youth Employment Solution Program immediately. Yes will help to keep our children above the school age from joining criminal gangs. The Youth Employment Solution is a very effective program once it is linked with the other areas that I'm going to talk about. On the yes, the JDF must begin a mass recruitment initiative of young people in the affected areas and across the island. Our youth will be engaged in the following areas under the YES program. They'll understand or undertake courses in understanding themselves, how to build and maintain a healthy body, a healthy mind, and a healthy personality or character. They'll study courses on building and maintaining strong personal, family, and business relationships. They'll take courses on building and maintaining solid money management skills and an in depth understanding of politics, history, economics, and government. We also want them to re engage with math, science, civics, and communications. But most importantly, we need our young people to be involved in an active apprenticeship program to develop skills in organic farming, computer coding, electronics, installation, carpentry, plumbing, etc. We also have opportunities for them to learn military training or to engage in community policing training, firefighter training, paramedic training. There's so many areas that we can integrate onto the YES program to help our children. We also need to incorporate private, public, and non-governmental organizations in the YES program to absorb all of our young people into meaningful activities. Examples include the Jamaica Esports Initiative to recruit young people from high crime areas into esport economy. We can also look at New Jamaica of Peace Foundation to roll out coding classes across all divisions in the high crime areas. Then there are farming organizations to help our youth develop hydroponic and aquaponic systems they can do to earn a living from. Then there's the importance of financial literacy and entrepreneurship to help our young people find ways to create their own jobs, legal jobs. They are doing so right now in the illegal space because our government has failed to properly cater for the needs of our young people. They are focused on blunt, painful measures as opposed to carefully thought out tactics of how to help our people achieve their best possible outcomes. Number four, we also need to immediately put an end to the government's use of Jamaica's security apparatus to police mask wearing, social distancing, and occupancy numbers in regards to the COVID-19 pandemic. Let's refocus the country's security apparatus towards the decades long crime epidemic and stop wasting our valuable resources locking people up for not wearing a mask or fining them for breaking or breaching some form of deer and may activities. Let us, for once, focus on the true cause and ensure that the cure is better than the disease itself. Number five, let's immediately put an end to all government funded advertisements on vaccines and refocus those funding towards promoting true public health. Let's educate Jamaicans on the importance of eating properly, engaging in organic farming, eating our naturally produced foods, and using our herbs. This will not only improve our health, it will stimulate our economy and make Jamaica a healthier nation and a more prosperous nation. Number six, let us immediately modify government regulations to reduce the negative effects on access to essentials. For example, let's reduce all the duties and importation levies on environmental products so that we can import the kind of things that we need to reduce the costs of essentials to Jamaicans who are currently struggling to survive. The Jamaican diaspora is there. They're willing and ready to support Jamaicans in any way possible. By removing all of these excessive fees and processes, we will allow our friends and families in the diaspora to bring in cheaply essential products that Jamaicans can use to recover from the government's lockdown policies. Let's remove all the unnecessary regulations on all, but especially the agriculture industry to stimulate growth in that sector. Let us suspend all the fees charged by the Company's Office of Jamaica for business registration, incorporation, and yearly filings, including those late filings. They're currently very punitive and onerous, and businesses that are struggling just cannot afford them. So, by having these high fees and onerous processes, we're only pushing our people farther behind and oppressing them and making them afraid of complying with basic registration features of government, which is also essential for proper management. Number seven, let's move all the civil court cases online and allow for weekend cases to take place so that we can focus the judiciary on in person trials of violent or major crimes. This will ensure greater speed in terms of justice. Number eight, let's cut the gang funding from the drugs for gun trade. For this, we have to employ technology for border control, things like armed drone patrol, satellite surveillance, ground sensors, unarmed coastal guards to observe and report quickly. We can also have a much faster response in terms of our Coast Guard, with armed jet boats stationed strategically around the island to respond to threats, not the lumbering large vessels we currently use, which are inefficient and ineffective. Let us use drones and satellite technology to monitor illegal landing areas and airstrips so we can quickly trap and catch those who are bringing in, you know, illegal guns into our country. Number nine, let's cut the funding from extortion and scamming. Extortion is focused on certain gang controlled areas. While it is not affordable to station police officers at every business being extorted, we can use CCTV and drone technology to monitor such businesses and quickly find out what's really happening and take effective actions. Let's drop the import duties on CCTV surveillance equipment, allowing businesses to quickly import these technologies and have them in places to help the police and to help themselves. The government of Jamaica must also speed up the process and reduce restrictions on all responsible citizens wanting to own a legal firearm. We must not make it difficult for people to defend themselves, especially when the police is not able to do an effective job. Scamming is also a source of income for gangs across Jamaica. Let's remove the young people from the criminal environments with the use of the YES program. This will reduce the knowledge base that gangs use to carry out their initiatives. They're using our bright young men and women to help them scam. Let's take those young men and women away from them by placing them in a lucrative, effective youth employment solution program, such as the one the UIC has designed. Number 10, let's set up a gang strike force, GSF, to choke off the gang's manpower supply. In addition to the social interventions measures already mentioned, which will reduce the cohort that the gangs recruit, this task force is aimed at taking out the existing gang leaders. It's made up of the leading investigators on the island. Their task will be to penetrate the gangs using undercover tactics, wiretaps, and other forms of surveillances to obtain evidence to put them away for good. The GSF's actions will be data driven. Gangs operate in specific areas they control. The GSF will gather the data and operations will target those areas. Put in place serious witness protection programs, which include temporary or permanent overseas relocation during and after a trial for gang members and their families, who give us credible evidence against other gang members and leaders. My fellow Jamaicans, the crime problem cannot be fixed by repeating what has failed or by expecting those who created the problem in the first place to fix it. We must come to terms with this fact as a nation, understanding that the problem of crime must be tackled from the top down, not from the bottom up. If we cut off the political head of the problem, the body will no longer have the funding or the protection it now enjoys to function. After 77 years of trying with those who created the garrisons, the gangs, and the ghettos, it is time for us to turn over a new leaf with a new system and a new leadership to create a new and better Jamaica. Thank you, and I will now take questions if you have any. So let's see what we have here. Um, uh, Good night, everyone. Good night. Thank you very much, Pat. Thank you, Marianne. And thank you, Ramon, Renee. Uh, Greetings, everyone. Thank you, Milar Bell. So let's see. Do we have any questions on the plan or on crime in general in terms of what I've just presented? Any questions on that? It says, what would we have done instead of the SOEs? So all the things I just mentioned, we would have done, implementing the YES program, uh, engaging our young people through the different organizations that we mentioned, and of course, addressing the issue of the police resources allocation, allocating our police to actually fighting real crime instead of fighting with people to wear a mask. So yeah, these are some of the key things we would do. Would also, free up the ability for us to import the things that we need to fight crime instead of government looking at making money from this. We focus on getting the tools into the hands of Jamaicans to fight crime. Are there any plans to reform gang leaders? Uh, well, that's not the key objective in terms of reforming gang leaders. The primary goal is to make sure that gangs can no longer operate effectively and that all Jamaicans who want to carry on a good and decent life will be able to do so. You might recall that we have an amnesty program that's a part of our Truth and Reconciliation Commission. That will allow us to assist those who actually want to be rehabilitated by them coming forward, sharing information, and allowing us to help. Question is, how important of a role do you think the health minister's role is in crime prevention? Well, the best thing to do with government is to run an integrated government where you're linking all the parts to solve the various problems. This thing where we have ministries operating in silos is not very helpful and healthy. So what we need to do is to make sure that our healthcare system, our education system, our economic system, our policing system, our justice system are working in concert so that they're being effective in addressing the needs of Jamaicans. What about all the red tape for persons to get an expungement on their records? It's causing a lot of young people to go back to crime because they can't get expungement done and places won't hire them. Very good question. It's very important for us to speed up all the processes and make them more efficient and effective. So we'll have to look at what's the cause, what's the bottleneck, and remove the bottleneck. We tend to run a very inefficient system of government, and that's because government doesn't compete with anybody else. You don't have an alternative source, so the government and the people in government tend to not care so much about what you call it now, customer service. So we have to look at that. What is your position on capital punishment for some of the most gruesome murders? The UIC's position is not to engage in executions or hanging and stuff like that because that's irreversible. So the most important thing is to make sure that we have a very effective justice system that identifies if the party in question is guilty, but to award a death sentence is very dangerous, especially in a corrupt environment. So we have to be very, very careful in how we use that. So it's best for us to avoid that and to make sure that the persons pay in terms of time and their involvement in the penal system. How they recontribute to society. Will you raise the soldiers and police pay, especially the JNSC, as poor people can't fight crime? I totally agree with you that we need to make sure that our police and soldiers are paid adequately at the professional level. So we need to treat police and soldiers, nurses and doctors, teachers like professionals, the professionals that they are, and make sure we hold them to a very high standard and compensate them as well so that they can live a decent life and do their work, effectively. What would you do about the justice system? The sentence are very weak. Well, we definitely have to look at what the sentences are for different crimes. And I think having an independent judiciary will help a lot with that, and having a process whereby we evaluate, um, the different sentences and have public input on those before we sign off on anything would be quite beneficial. Mandatory gun sentence is a good crime fighting strategy. Yes, having sentences that are fixed, that are objective, is very very good. But I want to tell you a very important thing for us to do though is to make sure we focus on the prevention side. Much of the problem we have with crime in Jamaica is driven by our education system, our economic system, our homes, parenting skills. So really, it's good for us to focus on getting the preventive side done and not just on the punitive side of the equation. Absolutely. So I was just mentioning that, Maury, that parenting is a serious problem. I mean, if you consider the fact that our education system fails some 70% of the students every year, these are the same students who are then going to be parents. So as long as we're not addressing our education system and ensuring that it does the things it needs to, which is why we have the LEAP program, the Learning Enrichment Empowerment Program, um, or advanced program. This program is designed to actually shift the education system away from simply preparing students to pass exams, to look for a job, to actually making students competent and effective as individuals, as human beings, so that they can be more, effective as a parent, as a person, as an employee, as a business owner. Yeah. What's your plan for the expensive custom fee? How would you cut that down? So the UIC is going to eliminate custom fees and replace it with a simple 10% GCT. So you're going to find the custom process a lot easier and the cost a lot smaller, so that you're not placed at a disadvantage to those who are having these products in other countries. So Jamaica has to develop a much more effective economy where we're actually exporting and stop looking for our revenues from just taxing the Jamaican people. So the current system is a heavy taxation system. The UIC system is a heavy production system. Will the UIC be addressing the prison condition? As somebody who recently was thrown into it, we definitely will. It's horrible. It's inhumane, and I think it's turning our those who are jailed or imprisoned into more criminals than before they went in many cases. So we have to treat our prisoners humanely, and we have to make sure we are helping them to reform and that they're also contributing to society and paying for the crime. Will there be a real job created in the prisons so that they won't be there eating taxpayers' dollars? Absolutely, Annalicia. The UIC is committed to ensuring that all our prisoners actually earn their keeps in prison so that it's a net zero cost to society and that they're contributing in various ways and that they're also learning and coming out better than they went in. So, good question. Thank you. Will citizens have the right to bear arms? Douglas Allen, absolutely. The UIC is very committed to respecting the rights of citizens to bear arms. That's very, very important for us. So let's take the next question. Will there be total reform in the system, especially with inmates getting phones and other things? Absolutely. We have to bring our prisons up to a more professional standards. When you're in prison, it should be prison, right? You don't have access to things you shouldn't have access to. So we're going to hold the warders accountable, the employees of the prison system accountable, and we're going to make sure that our prisons operate, optimally, and also make sure the prisoners are fully engaged in activities that's going to reform them and contribute positively to our society. General question: does the UIC have a youth organization as well as a political organization on the UTech and UWI campus? David, no, we don't have a special organization on UTech or UWI campus. And we don't have a youth arm per se. Our policy initially has been to integrate and not to separate. So, not to have a youth arm and a woman's arm, and this we prefer to have the young people talking with the older people, and the genders talking to each other and being a part of understanding the issues. However, we have had young people indicating that they desire to have a youth arm, and we're still looking into that. But in the meantime, we're fully engaging across the age spectrum and across the gender spectrum to make sure we have policies that are comprehensive. Will the country be able to run efficiently on 10% tax? So the question is efficiently. Right now, the country is extremely inefficient. So that's why your tax rate is very, very high. And just to put it in context, at the heights of America's greatness, their tax rate was less than 10% when they were producing the greatest amount and being the most fastest growing country in the world at the time. They were like 6% tax. So 10% is more than enough. The question is, do we understand the real role of government? Do we want to make sure government focuses on its lane so that we, the citizens, keep more of our income and that we spend that income in the way that we see fit, as opposed to having government take it from us and then spend it in a way that they see fit. UIC Liberty TV, what about the wharves where these guns flow in? Can we hit them heavy? Absolutely. A part of the UIC's um, plan is to make sure that we cut off the supply of guns and ammunitions coming into the island illegally. If we do that, that's more than 50% of the problem. I mean, if the criminals cannot get access to guns and ammunitions illegally, then we have seriously put a dent into the problem, and the rest is going to be fixed by our social interventions. I'm amazed at how, for 77 years, the two parties have not been able to use that very, very obvious strategy of just cutting off the supply of guns and ammos. But we're going to do that as a priority in managing the problem. What will be the outcome when it comes to corrupted ministers? Will those responsible for theft and corruption go to jail? Absolutely, Sean. We're going to make sure that every Jamaican is treated equally. So anyone found involved in any form of corruption or any other form of illegal activities will be treated swiftly and with justice and will pay the ultimate price um, based on the crime that was committed. We're going to have a top down approach, a very top down approach in terms of going after those at the top first and foremost in the corruption environment so that we can um, get a more corrupt free system. I really love what Singapore did. They really went after their politicians first, and that's what fixed the problem there. We need to do the same in Jamaica. Go after the politicians first, and that will quickly will nip it in the bud. Yeah. All right. I see Richie Grant asking, Uniters, I'm happy to be tuned in. Wonderful. Thank you, Richie. And Pat Walters, um, not sure what that's saying, but thank you. Good night. Or can I donate to the party without registering? Yes, you can donate to the party without being a member, if that's what you're asking. So, yes, you can do that without being a member. We welcome donations that are clean, of course. Will there be a forum from time to time where citizens can make suggestions and ask questions? Absolutely. We do have, well, right now the UIC has its members meeting and the public meetings from time to time. So you'll have access to that. When we form the government, you'll always have press conferences and opportunities to ask questions. We won't shy away from taking direct questions. How will we make elections free and fair in the upcoming election? Well, we can't make the elections free and fair in the upcoming elections because they're under the control of the current administration. But we definitely will be making sure that we have trained indoor and outdoor agents to fully participate in the process, to monitor the process and observe and report. And we will do our best to make sure that you know things go well. How can I get my voter ID? Go to your nearest electoral office of Jamaica, the EOJ. You can look it up online, Electoral Office of Jamaica. Just search for it and find the office nearest you. There's one in all the major towns across the country. Go there and apply for your voter ID. Would social workers be employed to identify families in need and social programs instituted to stem crimes and potential for crimes, at least in the initial phase of reformation? Thank you, Owen, for that question. We find that there are two things you need to undertake very early in the process. One is make sure that your education system is working from the basic school to primary through primary. Make sure that that is working, and then we need to have adult education programs that we have designed in our LEAP program to help adults to become re-educated. So through those two avenues and the community center programs, we will help every Jamaican to find their place again, understand their roles and responsibilities, and get the help that they need to properly engage as a citizen. So to answer your question, it's yes, but it's not in silos. It's a part of a bigger program, education and community development. By the way, thank you. I should tell everybody that Owen Aljo is one of our members and is a part of our finance committee helping to develop our policies and programs. So thank you for that question. What I'd like to see across Jamaica is upon building communities. We need to create parks. Oh, yeah, man, for sure. The UIC is very big on um, developing our green spaces, developing the public spaces. Right now, it's in shambles. Our public spaces are just dirty and unkept. We're going to make sure you have really nice green spaces, manicured landscaping right throughout the country, and parks for children to play, and safe parks, safe community centers that are modern, equipped for you to learn and to engage properly. How can people get more involved in supporting the UIC? Thank you for that question, TJ Robinson. If you go on our website, you can apply, you can volunteer to, be a candidate, to be on a committee, to help with policy, uh, be a part of our fundraising team. So there are so many ways. So go on our website and sign up to help. When will we get to know the UIC candidates face to face? JMH. Good question. We have been going through a lot of interviews. We have had more than 150, more than 160 candidates applied in recent weeks, and so we're going through them, meticulously, um, uh, interviewing, testing, evaluating, and very soon we'll be able to announce the names. So stay tuned; they're coming. We just have to vet them carefully so that we have good people, right? How ready are you for the local government elections? I need to see UIC workers in communities. We will have to work twice as hard as the others. Yes, absolutely. We're going to have to work very hard to be able to effectively compete in this election. It's not going to be easy. I mean, everybody knows that the UIC doesn't have a lot of money. We depend on our members to donate, small donations. So we don't have a lot of money to just spend and splurge. So we are building solidly a solid word of mouth campaign. So all of our candidates are busy building their teams of 12 across all the parishes and all the PDs. So that's going to be our major approach to reaching people. So all of you on here, for example, make sure you are telling at least 12 other persons about the UIC and creating your own UIC group wherever you are, here in Jamaica or abroad, and having that group reach other people, right? Will Renata Adams join the UIC as a police commissioner? I can't, I can't answer that. I mean, we have not considered Renata Adams for police commissioner. We've not had any discussions on that, but we're open to your suggestions for sure. Uh, Miller Rebel says, "I never voted in my life, uh, so far, but the UIC is a definite vote." Thank you very much, Miller. Appreciate that. Thanks for being frank and transparent with the Jamaican people, Michael Moras. Thank you for that. Yeah, we can only be honest and frank, because the truth is, we can't do this alone. What we're trying to do here is to fix a very, very long-standing and deep problem. Our country has been seriously damaged, first by slavery and colonialism, and then by our own leaders for the last 77 years. Our own Jamaicans who should have sought to correct the problem, they have actually compounded the problem. Uh, I've seen through history how they have transformed the Jamaicans from being something much better in 1962 to being what we are today. Anybody who has lived for as long as I have would have seen the transition. And if you're older than me, if you've been around, longer, you have seen the transition. You've seen the social fabric of the nation disintegrate. You have seen the increase in crime and violence. You have seen the depreciation in our values as a people. So, yeah, I can only be honest and frank. Nuff says the public markets are very dirty, really in need of some attention. Yeah, the whole country is dirty. The only places which are really very clean are the the politicians' homes. They all have nice mansions, most of them, and spaces where they occupy, like the Prime Minister's office and so on. And if you have like a park that's in front of a major um, you know, uh, operation like say um, the Pegasus Hotel, then that is developed nicely, because they don't want an ugly park in front of them. But the rest of Jamaica is just dirty. Our streets are unkept. Our communities are poorly designed and poorly maintained. It's really a pity. It's a pity that our politicians don't respect us or themselves. My wife often say to me, she says, they just don't have any respect for the Jamaican people. And I agree. They don't have any respect for us. So they don't think we need to have a quality environment. Fame says, what plans are in place for arts and culture, including reggae music? Geez, our plans are to liberate the Jamaican people right across the spectrum, from arts and culture and music to technology, innovation, invention. Our system liberates the Jamaican people to achieve their full potential. We don't single out so much any particular industry, and that's why we're focused so heavily on the Learning Enrichment Advanced Program, or LEAP, because LEAP is going to leap Jamaica forward, because everything about it is empowering the citizens, empowering our children, empowering our adults to be able to achieve their maximum potential. Just the freedom alone, just the changes in our regulations, retracting the overreach of government, reducing the taxes, the tax burden, making government more of a service rather than a master to the Jamaican people. It's going to make a big difference. What's the plan for the poor to own their own home on on land title? Big thing for us, Chucky. The We are committed to making every single Jamaican a property owner. Every Jamaican, every family must own property in this country, and so our plan is to do it in a number of ways. One is to follow the Singapore model, where we invest in very high quality condos. So most families that are struggling today will have a beautiful condo, proper bathroom, kitchen, bedroom, dining room, good living standard, right? Beautiful homes with parks and recreational centers and everything built into that for healthy living. We want to, however, preserve a lot of our good land for organic farming, water harvesting, and energy capture, so we can become um, energy secure, water secure, and food secure. But there's a lot more to it, because we also want to make sure that families who already have properties, already have homes, that those homes are built, right? Those homes are completed. So if you have incomplete homes, then we help you to finish those and just get them up and going, right? If you have land title which is in dispute, we fast track that and get those dispute resolved and get those lands into the hands of families and so on. So a lot of fast tracking will be done to help Jamaicans to become owners. We're opening this up to our 4 million Jamaicans abroad as well. So you're living overseas, we want you to own property in Jamaica. So bring all of our Jamaicans overseas to become property owners here in Jamaica if they're not already property owners. The lands that we dedicate, and that's a lot of land, to the organic farming, energy capture, water harvesting, those lands now will become lands that are owned by virtue of sheer ownership in the companies that are operating on those lands. So we give the Jamaican people ownership in those companies, sheer ownership in those companies, so that they're a part of the profits that comes out of all of that enterprise. So organic farming will become our oil, and from that oil of organic farming, many Jamaican families will now have an income that comes out of that, a passive income that comes out of that, that will make a big difference for them. How will the UIC build railways for the country? Maybe the question, Francine, is if we will, and yes, we will. We're going to put in place high speed rails from east to west, north to south, so that people don't necessarily have to buy cars unless they really want to. They'll be able to travel quickly from one end to the next. And this will be linked with our bus service. We're going to get us on a scheduled bus service so you can know exactly when the next bus is going to show up. We're going to really adopt the Uber mechanism for our taxes, our own local Uber system that allows you to have safe, clean, scheduled, taxis that you can call up. And of course, it groups people and move them around the country very quickly. The goal of the UIC is to make sure that you can live in Montego Bay and work in St. Thomas, and it's not a long commute for you to do so. Just to give you one example. Sandra Dawkins says, "Good night, Mr. President. What policies and programs would you put in place for children coming from abused homes? Will you get serious in charging these periods?" Absolutely. We're big on protecting the rights of our children. We're going to focus like a laser beam on protecting our children. Why? Because we understand that if we don't invest in our children, then we're going to have less than optimal human capital. So we want to see our people as our most important asset. So by investing in our children, protecting our children, as an example, nutrition, we're going to monitor the nutrition and health of our children. We're going to monitor the physical health of our children. We're going to monitor the mental health of our children. We're going to ensure that they're getting the best possible tuition. So we must have teachers that are highly trained and competent, qualified to teach the subjects that they're teaching, so that our children gets the best attention from as early as possible. So from the basic school level, primary school level, all the way through, we want top quality teaching so that our children are not suffering. Right now in Jamaica, most of our children fail mathematics, and it's very simple. Why? They have poor math teachers at the basic school level, poor math teachers at the primary school level, and it continues through to high school. So the government's approach of adding 2 more years to this system is actually a waste. We don't need to add 2 more years. What we need to do is to focus on the problem. And the problem is poor quality teaching and poor quality students because of poor quality parents and because of a poor quality economy. So if we shift now and realize, okay, we have some serious problems, so let's make sure we intervene and get our children immediately up to speed with a healthy diet of Jamaican food, our own yams, our own organic foods, not the processed foods, real organic Jamaican food being cooked and served to our children for breakfast and lunch at a minimum. Brain foods, so that their brains can be developed properly, their bodies can mature properly, and they can engage and learn in school properly. Also, shifting the curriculum so that the focus is not so much first and foremost on math and language and science, but first and foremost on understanding yourself, understanding relationships, and understanding money. If we make sure that our children understand themselves, mind, body, and spirit, and understand relationships, building strong family relationships, business relationships, and social relationships, and understanding money, economics, politics, and government so that they're wise, they can make good decisions. And then they're, of course, integrate the subjects, all the sciences. Every student should learn science and they should learn it properly, and they should learn math properly and communications properly, because these are fundamental tools for applying all the other things they need to apply in life. What will you do about violence promoting music? Thank you for that question, Will. One of the interesting thing about a free society is that in a free society, people must be able to choose. So if a person wants to make a violent music where they're talking about, and it depends on what you call violence, by the way. If the person is inciting people to kill other people, no, that's not, it's just like you threatening someone. So we cannot allow, people to encourage breaking the law. So if the music is about breaking the law or about killing people, taking away people's rights and freedoms, then that must not be tolerated. If the music, however, is just not to some people's taste, then we can't do anything about that, because people must be free to express themselves in the way that they want to, as long as they're not inciting violence, or seeking to deny somebody their rights using force or fraud. So we have to find that delicate balance. Also, where's the music? Is it in your ears, or are you playing it in public? Because in public, no, right? So like what we have now, where people play all these kind of music on the buses. When I was growing up as a kid, for example, you drive in a bus or a taxi and you hear this lewd, music being played and so on. Unacceptable. Not going to happen in a UIC Jamaica. In a UIC Jamaica, you must have peace. Peace in your home, peace in public transport, and have the freedom to listen to what you want to at home, and to listen to what you want to privately in your headset or whatever. So we have to find that balance and make sure we protect the rights of everyone. Uh, Joseph French is asking, will we be looking to strengthen ties with our fellow Caribbean countries in military, trade, medicine, education? Yes. The simple answer is yes. But more than that, the UIC is interested in a united Caribbean. So we want a single state, a single nation, where all of the Caribbean nations are one in a federal state system. So you have individual provinces or states, but one country, one nation, sharing resources and protecting our borders and making ourselves into a powerful economy. We also want to extend that hand of friendship and integration with our friends in Africa. So we also want to see one Africa, a United States of Africa, and to have that bond to be extended to the Caribbean, and for the people of African descent around the world to know that they have a country, which is theirs, a big country, including the Caribbean and Africa, which belongs to them and which they belong to. And should they have any need, we come to their aid wherever they are around the world. Marilyn Fletcher says, my husband and I are planning our return to Jamaica within the next year. Interested in starting tech training for youth. What support will we be given? So we'll be more than happy to give you any support we can. As a returning resident, you can get advice from us, and we can point you in the right direction. We can help you to know how to keep safe, and we're happy to work with you to the best of our ability and our resources. So just let us know in more detail, and we'll be happy to facilitate as best we can. How will UIC develop Jamaica's medicinal plants, including marijuana, uh, uh, to benefit the Jamaicans? Thank you, Michael. Well, we believe that it's for far too long, for far, far too long, we have not been focusing on developing Jamaica's ability to address its needs medically, economically, educationally, militarily, by focusing on our ability to do things. We've been a begging country. We just beg, you know. We beg Cuba, we beg North America, we beg Europe, and we've developed a culture of just wanting to get from other people and not being able to give anything. We have to change that mindset. And so our education program or economic program is geared towards liberating Jamaicans from that way of thinking and engaging in all kinds of enterprises, including um, our herbs, uh, including marijuana. For one thing, we're going to make marijuana fully and truly, you know, legal, just like Kalalo, right? There should be no restrictions on you planting, harvesting, experimenting, building new products from marijuana or any other herbs. I'm just doing that in an orderly fashion, in a way that respects the rights of others, transparency, and proper safety protocols, and so on. So we're going to really free up the Jamaican people to become mass producers of solutions that can benefit the world. Facebook users asking, um, I think the root cause of Jamaica problem is corruption. How do you plan to deal with it? You're absolutely correct. The root cause of our problem is corruption, and that begins with a corrupt system. The system of governance that we have is designed to be corrupt. Its very design is corrupt. And I could go into the full details of that, but suffice it to say, the system we have, the system that we got from our colonial masters, is designed to corrupt us. and to ensure that we have a corrupt country. So we're going to fix that by changing the system to one with proper checks and balances which are truly Jamaican, where it's of the people, for the people, and by the people, which devolves the power from the politician and put the power back in the hands of the Jamaican people, make the government now the servant of the people and no longer the master of the people. So if you look at our website, you'll see a full program as to how we're going to change the system. Basic things like having a directly elected president, an elected Senate, checks and balances between the Senate and the House and the executive branch, proper separation of powers, having the judiciary really functioning as a judiciary, revamping the police to have a police service with proper oversight, you know, all the things that is going to make sure that Jamaica become a truly accountable country that holds, its politicians accountable and also its citizens accountable for playing their part in ensuring, a good system of governance. What will be your key focus for the first term as Prime Minister? My key focus and that of the UIC will be to replace the Constitution. We must get rid of the colonial Constitution. It is the foundation of all of our problems. So we must get rid of the Constitution as fast as possible. It is our expectation that we will do so in the first year, and then to use the next 4 years after that, to make the regulatory changes and phase them in, all the way to the end of the final year. We will immediately set the next election date, so it will not be a guesswork or any manipulation. So the day we win the election, we will follow the existing constitution as to the date that will be set for the next one. And so we'll have that as the date set for the next one. So there'll be no games playing, and we'll now focus our attention on having the new constitution be fully vetted by the Jamaican people, discussed around the island, and taking into consideration any new inputs. Having our constitutional lawyers, give their full input. Having civil society give their full input. The private sector, all the Jamaican people input. And then at the end of that, we have a referendum by the end of year one, and we will have a new constitution with a president, three vice presidents, Cornwall, Middlesex, and Surrey, 21, sorry, instead of 21, 14 senators elected by parish, and a remodeled local government and House of Representatives for a more efficient government, a smaller government, one that's more cost effective, that costs you only 10% of your income and can deliver on the objectives necessary. What will the UIC do to relinquish the white queen control of the JDF? By changing the constitution, all of that changes. So the police will change, the JDF will change, our school system will change, our economic model will change, our attitudes will change, our outlook will change, our values will change, because for the first time in the history of Jamaica and any um, Afrocentric country in the world, you're going to have true freedom. We'll be the first real constitutional republic the world has ever seen. America tried, but they failed because they didn't go all the way. We're going to go all the way to protect your sovereignty as an individual. Will we revive the cane industry? Karen Gordon is asking. All industries will be revived, whether it's cane, banana, coffee, manufacturing. There's a time when I was a kid, we were manufacturing electrical parts, small parts, like the plugs, the outlets, and stuff like that. Here in Jamaica, we don't do that anymore. We're going to bring back all of those industries, and it's really not as complex as you think. The primary reason for the demise of most of the industries we have in Jamaica is because of government interference, politicizing the industry as opposed to liberating the industry. It's using politicians as gatekeepers. If they don't get something, something can't happen. We're going to remove all of that so that the average Jamaican can once again think freely, innovate freely, invent freely, organize freely, create freely, and produce a more dynamic economy for all of us. One main thing I would love for you to do, sir, when you become Jamaica's PM, says Marsha, and that is to change the PM pay setting after the time expired. Throughout their reign, they have earned enough to live happily ever after. Thank you, Marsha. Definitely, we're going to get rid of the PJ Patterson law that allows that mandates that the Prime Minister receives a pension that is equal to a sitting prime minister. That is absolutely foolish and disrespectful, and a miscarriage of justice, if you will. The pension of any civil servant, any public servant, should be no better than what is in the private sector. But bear in mind, we need to pay our leaders well. And I'm not saying that because one day I may be prime minister or whatever, but you get what you pay for. So we need to make sure that we have a proper compensation for those who were asking to properly lead our country and to hold them properly accountable. So we want to make sure that our politicians, our teachers, our nurses, our doctors, our police officers, our soldiers, our firefighters, all the people who we want to give us high quality service, that they're paid well and that they're highly qualified and competent to fill the positions that they have, and that they are held to account for delivering on the targets and objectives and KPIs associated with their functions. So I'm not going to tell you here that we're looking at some skimpy pays for our political representatives. What I'm saying is we're going to pay them well and we're going to demand quality output from them in the process. And we're not going to have a disproportionate retirement plan for politicians versus the people. Marv is writing, she says, I'm curious in what you said about slavery being one of the causes of Jamaica's problems. Why do you think that is? Just curious. Oh, well, it goes without saying, Marv, that the the vast majority of Jamaicans are the descendants of people who were enslaved by other people. And so that would have had an impact on our psyche. As a matter of fact, it was quite impactful in 1944 and 1962 when we made key changes in the way we were governed. In 1944, when we had self government and we were allowed to participate in elections for the first time, remember, the people would have been highly uneducated, not understanding much about what governance is or should be. And so they would not have been able to hold their political representatives to account or even know what to ask for. You saw that again in 1962 when we had the new constitution. The people were actually cheering a constitution that was to their destruction, one that placed a foreigner from another country as head of state over them, and one which created enormous imbalances in power within the office of the PMO and structures which would make for a tremendous amount of corruption. So the people weren't educated enough, they weren't aware enough to be able to assess these things and question these things. And so they were tricked and fooled by a few Jamaicans who were trained by their foreign masters and used the opportunity to enrich themselves as a result. So now we're going to have a different nation where we can talk to each other properly and orient ourselves properly. So we need to understand how slavery impacted us and how our own leaders impacted us and how the system we have been following for the last 77 years has impacted us. Karim is asking, what makes you think foreign countries will allow you to do all these things? Karim, I don't think foreign countries will allow us to do anything. They have their own interest and we have ours. You might be aware of Singapore. Singapore was in far worse shape than Jamaica in 1965 when they got independence from England. We got independence in 1962. So 3 years later, they were independent. They were faced with tremendous problems internally, religious wars because they had different religious sects fighting each other, language wars. Jamaica, we have one primary language, right? Jamaican, Patois, and to some extent English. They had transient citizens, uh, and they had a huge communist battle that was happening internally. So many problems, and they did many of what I'm talking about. Created a very safe society, a very clean society, a very anti-corrupt society, a very orderly society, a society that really invest in children and make them uh, make their children very, very competent to the point where today Singapore is unable to find local people, local residents, Singaporeans to do the low end work. They have to import people. So we have to navigate the global space of geopolitics like any other country has to. And it all comes down to diplomacy. I've had the privilege of traveling to many countries. I worked with about 120 different countries. Traveled to China, other countries in Asia, Africa, many countries in Europe, North America. So I've had experience seeing how these countries operate and how their leaders operate. So we just have to negotiate our way through life. The same way you have to do it as an individual in a very difficult situation as an individual, we need to navigate the global space also. And yes, we can. Will the UIC teach Jamaicans about engineering, technologies, food industry, shipping, logistics? About, yeah, absolutely, Francine. We're actually going to rev that up. We're going to rev up mathematics, a key thing that we're weak in. Really rev up math, rev up communication so we can communicate effectively. Um, we're starting off with the individual. So we are going back to basics and ripping up the script somewhat and shifting the situation to making sure that we help the child to understand who they are, to be able to build good relationships, and to understand economics, and then have the core competences in math and science, uh, technology, to be able now to be effective innovators and developers and designers, all of which encompass what you're talking about here. The key thing, is to liberate the minds of our people, so that they can produce. Yeah. So uh, a big part of tonight's discussion was about crime in Jamaica. So we have spoken about that. You heard my presentation earlier. That remains a major impediment to growth in Jamaica. As long as we don't have a safe Jamaica, we won't have a prosperous Jamaica. So we have to see the link between the crime monster created by the two colonial parties and the need for us to fix that if we're going to have all the other things in Jamaica. But the beauty about the UIC in how we address the problem is that we see the problem as an integrated problem. So it's not like you just run out there and do states of emergencies, or run out there and just hunt down criminals. We have to deal with addressing the young people and them being a part of the funnel into the crime on the world. So if our school system isn't helping them to matriculate into society properly, we have to address that, and it isn't. If our healthcare system, and healthcare needs to be not just about what do you call it now, fixing the problem after it occurs, but dealing with preventative methods, and one of the key part of prevention is proper nutrition. So we want to, if you have proper nutrition, you have proper development. So we want to address the nutrition as a key factor, address the home situation. If people are living in squalor, that creates problems. So that's why I want to make all Jamaicans homeowners. So we're going to accelerate that process. As soon as we get into office, we're on a mission to build quality housing and provide intergenerational mortgages that allows every single Jamaican family to get out of the ghettos, get out of the squatter communities, and get out of the garrisons by flattening all of those, changing them, and building a new space within those areas, making them open now to the full economy, open to tourism, open to a future that is not one where, based on your address, you're then excluded. We want all addresses now to be a good address. So if you live in Tivoli, it's a good address. If you live in a Bacawal, it's a good address. If you live in a Riverton, it's a good address. So we want to make sure that we really transform Jamaica and transition it out of what we've seen so far into this very new reality, and that can only happen by very, very focused and diligent governance. So once again, everyone, thank you so much for joining me tonight. It's been a pleasure talking to you. I enjoyed all the questions. I wish I could spend some more time with you, but I have to get on to some other matters now for the next day's work. So thanks again for your contribution and questions. And have yourself a very, very good night. And please like, share, and subscribe. And many of you are already commenting. So that's very good. Get all your friends to subscribe to UIC Liberty TV. Why? Because this is the primary space through which I can communicate with you. You will not see me very often on a CVM or a TVJ because they are committed to blocking us, right? The Gleaner, the Observer, the TVJ, the CVM, the radio stations, they're not trying to make sure Jamaicans hear from the UIC. They're trying to make sure that the Jamaican people does not hear from us. So our primary way of reaching you is by having you on UIC Liberty TV. So please, if you have not yet subscribed, do so. Tell all your friends and family to do so you can hear all about what we're doing, when we're doing it, how we're doing it. Coming up shortly, we're having our next big candidates meeting that's coming up very, very shortly. We had a big one last week. So we have some freshly trained candidates that are going to be coming out. They're already now going out into different communities. The end of this week, we'll have another batch fully trained and going out into the communities, and the following week and the following week. So we're really getting there. But you have to help us to be able to reach Jamaicans. Tell everybody you know. They're not going to hear it over the news because the news is there to suppress information. Unfortunately, we don't have objective journalism. We don't have a media which is unbiased. So you'll hear, for example, the Prime Minister makes an announcement and they'll run over and ask one party, what do you think about it, and get their views and publish that. They will not do the same for the UIC. They do not want you to hear from us. So you have to help us to get all 3 million Jamaicans at home and all 4 million Jamaicans abroad to hear what's happening, what the UIC is about. So share, subscribe, and please donate. Without your donations, we can't do anything because we do not take money from big business who will want to control our agenda and direct what we do. So we're not taking any money from. We are a party that's owned by you. The UIC is owned by the people. We're the people's party. Okay? So the UIC is yours. And what we do and what we achieve is solely dependent on you. Without you, we're nothing. So thanks again for your time. Have a good night until we speak again. All the best.